I'm Maitreyi Sitharaman, and this week we're putting the spotlight on the fiscal drain that Europe's long-term unemployment crisis is putting on our children, our families and our country's finances. We're in snowy Sweden to find out what smorgasbord of policies the Swedes are using to keep their long-term unemployment low despite an influx of people from around the world. Let's create a hypothetical scenario where everyone on the street in Stockholm represents Europe's unemployed. Half have been out of a job for about a year and 2/3 have been out of a job for more than 2 years. That means there are 10.5 million long-term unemployed in Europe, creating a need for an EU-wide action plan. So here's a crash course on what the recommendations are.
If long-term unemployment was a pinball game, how would you get the highest score? A job. Currently, 1 in 5 long-term unemployed people will drop out of the game because lack of coordination between social and employment services means only 73% are registered, are getting what little support there is, and employers are not engaged in most current systems. New EU proposals suggest that for long-term unemployed to stay in the game, first they must score a registration with an employment service, then receive an individual assessment. More points can be milked with a job integration agreement. That needs to provide mentoring and assistance for a job hunt, further training and education, and support for housing, transport, childcare or rehabilitation. The jackpot needs to be awarded for employer engagement, and the game can only have a single point of contact.
What's common amongst most European countries is that only about 20% of employment programs are aimed at the long-term unemployed, despite their huge numbers, and spending is focused on public work schemes, and not enough is done to incentivize or involve employers. So how do you transition people back into the labour market under those conditions? Here's Gianni Maggi's analysis.
Slovakia is one of the European countries with a more robust economic growth rate, more than 3%. The unemployment rate is slightly below the average of the Eurozone, but with a particular feature. 9.4% of the workforce is unemployed. More than 60% have been jobless for more than a year, long-term unemployed. Many of them were unable to adapt to changes in the global economy.
I did professional work in telecommunications. As staff numbers decreased, technology advanced, so fewer workers were needed. So I was made redundant.
Unfortunately, my work is more male-oriented, and most of the time the employer chooses a man who's usually younger.
Slovakia's government took several measures to tackle this issue, lowering taxes for low-paid workers, granting in-work benefits for the long-term unemployed, reorganizing the Central Labour Office, and creating sectoral councils involving about 1,000 human resources specialists.
It is not possible to solve this problem without close cooperation of employers, because they are those responsible for employment, and therefore we have to listen to them. How should look, let me say, the ideal employee, or what skills should this employee have?
Long-term unemployment is a European issue. In many countries, more than half of the unemployed have been inactive for over a year. One of the factors behind the increase is poverty in Europe since the beginning of the economic crisis. This Spanish engineer has found a job in Slovakia. In Spain, around half of unemployed people are long-term, and the competition between them is fierce.
For one workplace, there are a lot of candidates. You have to stand out, you have to sell yourself, you have to make the person reading your resume almost fall in love with you. Make him say, "This guy's good, and I need him." Every day you get up and you say, "This could be the big day." After looking and looking, Slovakia has found me. I've found Slovakia. We like each other, and here we are.
It's a story that shows how the right education and professional training, along with a better coordination between national policies, can achieve concrete results, even on a European scale.
Sweden's labour programmes have always been held up as an example for the rest of the world. Population growth has been up, and that's a whole new challenge for Ylva Johansson, Sweden's labour minister. What policies worked in the past and what's had to change?
As a Swedish minister, you used to say, in Sweden we have a system. But when it comes to helping newcomers into the labour market, actually there is a lack of system. So we have to develop new kind of strategies at the same time as we handle a very huge population that's come to Sweden last year and is now entering the labour market. So education policy is a very important part of that. Continuing education, some extra training, practicing, starting to work, to combine that into a fast track into the labour market. Second thing is that involving the social partners, especially the unions, is very important. We have a long tradition of doing that.
Do you think the housing market, the labour market needs changing?
Yes, the labour market is not so regulated. It's mostly regulated by social partners in collective agreements, so that's quite flexible. But the housing market needs some big reforms, and the government is working on that.
What are the new ideas we can bring to the table, considering we're going to see a supply shock with all this migration?
Giving the financial resources for people with a low level of education to be able to finance their adult education, so they won't need to have loans, so they will have some direct money from the state, so they can come up to a compulsory school level or upper secondary school level. The second initiative is to help people to finance a driving license, because that might be the difference between having a job or not. So we will also trying to help to find a system to help people financing getting a driving license.
What would your recommendations be to your fellow labour ministers around Europe?
We are living in a world where a lot of people are running away from hell. We have to take our share of responsibility. This is, I think, the most important thing. We might need some reforms in the labour market. Swedish case, for example, we have the highest employment rate in the European Union right now, and we had that for many years. And of course, so something is actually working quite well in our labour market. So we have to be aware that we are not destroying things that are working well. We need reforms that are focused on those who have the specific needs, and be a little bit careful about reforms that will turn upside down on the whole labour market.
Ylva, on that note, thank you very much for your time and those ideas, and thank you for watching. We'll catch you next time.